The journey we've been traveling during this series has guided us to know that the essence of God is love, and our response to that love is a desire to do His will. We also discovered that doing His will involves loving our neighbor. That all sounds straightforward, but of course, life is never a straight line, and often trials and difficulties prevail. When our beliefs and ideals are tested through all kinds of adversities involving health, money, relationships, fear, or loneliness, where to turn when hope seems absurd and the essence of it all escapes us? Pope Francis said, "God makes suffering His own and transforms it. Nothing is more puzzling or difficult to grasp than a God that died on the cross. Yet that is the measure of love." In John's Gospel, we read that Jesus gave us a new commandment. It's a strong word, commandment, and yet it's the one He called His own. "This is my commandment, love one another as I love you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Chiara Lubich penetrated this mystery in a profound and consequential way. She was still a young girl when she heard a priest speaking about the suffering of Christ. They were pondering over the question of when was the moment Jesus suffered the most during His life. The conclusion, on the cross, when He cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Think of it. Jesus had the impression that His Father had abandoned Him, the one who sent Him. He had been beaten, spit upon, rejected, and apart from a few, His followers had abandoned Him. Now this, Father was no longer in His sight. He experienced darkness so overwhelming that it was unimaginable. In some mysterious way, Jesus felt deprived of the consoling presence of His Father. Chiara turned to a friend of hers and said that if this was the moment when Jesus suffered the most, it was then that He loved us the most. Together, they vowed to choose Jesus forsaken, as they referred to Him in that moment of His suffering, as their model in life, to see His face and hear His cry in every suffering and console Him.
It is enough for us to see that we are similar to you, at least a little, and unite our suffering to yours and offer it to the Father. So that we might have light, you ceased to see. So that we might have union, you experienced separation from the Father. So that we might possess wisdom, you made yourself ignorant. So that we might be clothed with innocence, you made yourself sin. So that God might be in us, you felt Him far from you.
So suffering, fatigue, and pain have a paradoxical purpose. They are an opportunity to recognize and love Jesus, who suffered just as we do, and can be a channel to profound peace and fulfillment, the kind that can deeply satisfy the human heart. Consequently, it makes us instruments of God's love that can touch the heart of others. Some of the most challenging suffering to bear is that of others around us. At times we're simply helpless underneath someone else's cross. But within that seeming helplessness and powerlessness lies a call to simply listen and be, to be there with someone suffering, just as Mary, the mother of Jesus, at the foot of the cross. It may seem small, but to those suffering, having someone stand with them can make all the difference in the world.
A few years ago, Pope Francis wrote a letter in which he said that we always pictured Mary with the baby Jesus, but really we should be picturing the gray-haired Mary with the Jesus at the foot of the cross, who stayed with Him when most other people abandoned Him. In fact, he called this the stabat, or to stay. When the world is feeling unsafe or hopeless, we can also stay, and in this way, be like Mary, a candle of hope for the world. We can stay with people in the darkness. And I'm a social worker, and I work mostly with families who have dementia. And this really resonated with me because so often I feel like that's my role. My role is to stay with people, to stay with families. Oftentimes I can help a little bit with interaction, but I can't change the reality of the diagnosis. I went home after reading this. I was around my house. I was saying jokingly, I think I'm going to get a tattoo which says Stabat on it with a candle on top to always remind me of this Mary who stayed with Jesus, and to remind me that this is my role, right? I can stay with this Jesus that I so often find in the world, who is suffering, who is abandoned. At one point, my son said to me, "Hey, Mom, let's go get your tattoo today. I have a friend, he needs to talk to you. And so we can get your tattoo and he can talk to you at the same time." And I said, "Honey, it was a joke." My son looked a little crushed. And I said, "Give him my card if he needs to talk to me." So that night I went to bed and I was, thinking to myself, I love my son. And is it such a big thing to go get a little tattoo and then I could talk to his friend? In this way, I could also stay with my son. And so the next morning I got up and I said to my son, "Okay, we can get a little tattoo on my arm and that way I can talk to your friend." And my son was so happy that I realized that really this was the right decision. So we went to the tattoo shop and I met his friend and he started drawing on my arm. And pretty soon he started telling me the story of his mother. He started crying. My son started crying. All the tattoo artists from the other rooms were coming. They were all crying. And at that moment, I really felt that I was in the presence of profound suffering. And I felt that what I could do was to really listen to him with all my heart and be that presence of love for him. And almost to feel a little bit like Mary with the forsaken Jesus, with her son. And so I stayed and I listened, and it hurt a little bit, but not too much. And at a certain point, he said to me, "It's done." And I thought he was saying that he was done with the drawing. So I looked at my arm, and all of a sudden I realized that he was done with the tattoo. And I said, "Oh, wow, it's a little bigger than I thought." When I look down, I am reminded that my purpose is also to love through living the Stabat, staying with people through the darkness of life until the light returns. And afterwards, I took his information, and I realized I really was able to help his family a little bit. And now at this point, I realize that I have this constant reminder on my arm that of my role, in a sense, my mission in life.
Let's face it, it's simply natural not to like pain. We tend to either fear it or run away from it. But recognizing our suffering as an opportunity to share in Jesus' suffering and to see this as an expression of our love for him changes our perspective. It gives value to the unavoidable suffering that comes to us every day. So it's not embracing pain, but embracing Jesus in the most profound manifestation of his love for us. When I find a cross in my life, I encounter Jesus on it.
I wish to bear witness before the world that Jesus forsaken has filled every void, illuminated every darkness, accompanied every solitude, annulled every suffering, canceled every sin.
I had the good fortune of knowing Tom Hartmann, an extraordinary man who lived every phase of his life, especially the home stretch, to the fullest. Tom was an incredibly gifted yet humble man. Professor Emeritus of English and Religion at Brooklyn College, he was a husband, a father of 10, and actively involved in interreligious dialogues for decades. Aging can be a scary process, especially after a life of intense activity. The temptation to view your life as no longer a valuable contribution to society permeates much of today's thinking. But to Tom, in his fine-tuned awareness, aging is as precious as ever.
When I was maybe about 20 years old, I said, when I was praying to God, I told him, "I want to be like you. I want to live like you, and I want to die like you." That was a big, kind of rash statement. Well, at first it's always difficult to stop doing things because I like to work with my hands, but my fingers are all numb now, so I can't do any physical work with my hands. But I just decided some time ago that I want to do the will of God. And if this is the will of God, then I'm glad, I'm happy. And I've been very happy since I got older. I tell you, I get happier every year. And it's wonderful because there's so much peace in knowing that I'm doing what God wants, not what I want. I have some very serious pains. Right now, the thing bothering me is neuropathy, and that's the nerves are on the outside, not hidden deep, but on the outside. So anyone touches me, I suffer with Jesus, and that's a great joy, but it's not a human kind of thing. Try to say yes first. You want it? Okay, I want it too. It's hard when you're suffering not to think of yourself. That was a big step for me. Suffering usually makes me selfish. And I'm so glad when I can think of someone else and my suffering is lessened. Really lessened, there's no doubt about it. Chiara Lubich taught me that these sufferings are our treasure and that we can help not only ourselves, but help other people. Really, your life is valuable because you can still help people. Even when you're old and you're suffering, and I can't walk, I can't do anything hard. But these are precious moments that may bring someone to heaven. As you get older, you understand better what's going on, and you are closer to God. And I think I would never want to be young again. I've never felt that. And I know a lot of my friends here, they wish they were teenagers again. I never want to be a teenager. I never want to be younger. I'm anxious to, well, like St. Paul said, I don't know whether I'm more wanting more to go to heaven or to stay here and do your will. And I try to do it the way he did it and say, whatever God wants, if he wants me here to help save some more souls, if I can do that, I'll be very happy too. But if he'll take me, I'll be very, very happy.
In this brief series, we've touched on some of the points of the spirituality of unity of the Focolare Movement. It's a spirituality that begs company, two or more. We're called to be a community, bearers of hope, and through our lives bring the transformative love of the gospel to the world around us. If we're open to seeing Jesus in the big and small suffering around us, as Paula and Tom were able to do, we become capable of responding with love that Jesus gave during his greatest moment of anguish. We can be confident that our journey to be on point, to living a spirituality of communion, will continue. And that journey will be nothing short of a divine adventure. If you'd like more information or wish to find the Focolare community nearest you, visit focolare.us. And our journey continues.